like to pay my respects to the Djadjawarrung people, I'm always aware of the fact that in this beautiful country, I stand on Aboriginal land, a land that was stolen, never ceded. And I think certainly in the context of talking about justice, we must framework all of our conversations about what we consider to be fairness, what we consider to be rights, what we consider to be equality, on the shadow of the genocide that took place on the land that we inhabit. And to everyone here who is Indigenous tonight, I pay my humble respects to your custodianship of a land that I live on and love so much. Now, because I was just going to do questions, but I've decided to read a few love letters because I'm in the media, which is not what I meant to do with my life. I went to drama school. I'm supposed to be doing something very different. But I'm in the media and I get lots of love letters from fascists. And being in Bendigo, I thought I'd say big hello to the 5 angry boys and their friend who dogged this place so unfairly for so long. Because last year I did, as I am wont to do, I did a fundraiser for the Asylum Seeker Resource Centre in Melbourne. Community organisation, obviously has to seek charitable funds to support the asylum seeker and refugee community in Melbourne. And it was literally like the most morally positive thing I think I've ever been involved in was taking phone calls in a telethon to say, can you donate some money so we can buy food, blankets and warm clothing for these refugees to survive the Melbourne winter. I don't think that's particularly arguable. If you don't want to give money to that cause, don't call in. But I did a little video promoting the event, like they asked all of the telethon participants to do, and I was targeted by a fascist organisation or group on the internet. I put, calling them organisations is a bit aspirational. And I'm going to read out some of the love letters, and the language is terribly, terribly bad. But just so you know, I gave this in evidence to a Senate inquiry recently and had the pleasure of being the first person to commit these words in this particular order to the Hansard. You are a dumb bitch, you're going to get gang raped by a group of refugees, then get decapitated, lol. She can't get a dog to please her. You belong in an oven. They think I'm Jewish. Dumb as fuck, kill yourself. I'm so looking forward to seeing her in her next video and demonstrate it on herself how female genital mutilation works. Bend over for some diseased anal before your throat is cut, dumb shit, self-loathing hater of your parents. That fucking makeover sure went south. Fuck, at least that Sheila with a tea towel and glasses, Abdel McGilla Magoo, is a better sort. I believe in nothing she says, but I'd give her one just to spread a few more Christian tadpoles. I don't entirely think that's what Jesus had in mind, but never mind. She eats cut clit cereal. And why doesn't she put them up in her house where they can trash it and rape her and then stone the whore to death? I got 400 of these in 24 hours, 400. And I lovingly filed them all and did as I was wont and went down to the police station to make a report about the fact that people had threatened my bodily safety and my life. And the police are very nice, and I have a file and they collect all of my love letters. And what's amazing about these is they actually have the names of, they're from Facebook, they have the names of the people who wrote them on them. But the police didn't pursue them, they didn't investigate them, and my relationship with the police is very positive. I like to think I'm compiling a paper trail just in case one of these gentlemen does rape and kill me, so maybe if something particularly serious happens, we'll all have a place where we can look. But as it turns out, and as I've discovered since, there are actually 5 laws in the state of Victoria that absolutely affirm my right not to be subjected to these kind of threats and this kind of hate. 5 laws. And yet it's an issue around the awareness of the police, the preparedness of that particular justice system to take action on my behalf, which is failing somebody like me in this circumstance. I'm going to tell some more stories. My friend Susie is a brilliant lawyer. She won the University Medal in Law and Government. At a very young age, she was headhunted by an international merchant bank to go and run their banking acquisition department in their London office. This was an extraordinary opportunity for a young Australian woman, and she was unbelievably good at her job. Imagine her horror at the Christmas party that she was obliged to attend when her boss gave a speech discussing the achievements of the department over that year and made particular point of remarking on just how appealing he found her breasts. Now, I'm going to translate the following discussion, which was in front of everybody she worked with, into Australian, because obviously my English accent is not convincing. You know, we've welcomed a lot of people to the department this year, but my personal favourite has got to be Susie, because I just love staring at her fantastic breasts. Susie, I think I speak for all of us here when I say we all regret you're married, because any of us would like to give you one. Do Australian men have big dicks? Because a lot of Australians descend from the Irish and we all know what they were like. Or is he British like us? Ha ha, you know what I'm saying. But seriously, of all the women in this department, you're the one I'd masturbate first. Not exactly encumbered with a sense of honour, she decided to leave, picked up her jacket, at which point her boss chased her across the room and said, "You can't leave, you're covered in wine." This was, of course, his cue to pour wine over the top of her head, and when she removed her jacket in order to get the wine off herself, he grabbed her breasts in front of her entire department. Now, the Monday after this particularly traumatising, humiliating episode, well done with under the mantle of a good night out with the department, she went to see Human Resources in her building to ask that either she or the boss be transferred out of the department. Our working relationship is not practical. She had written a deposition, she was very clear about what happened, and she felt unsafe, unappreciated, and unable to do her job. "What do you expect us to do about it?" said HR. My friend was also in a situation where what had happened to her was illegal, but she was put through a process of reconciliation where she found herself in situation with the boss, attacked and harassed by other staff for daring to make a complaint, and finally frozen out of her department to the point where they were essentially trying to bully her into a position where she could know that she would quit her job. She did successfully sue them, and she took them for a lot of money. But the damage to her career, her mental health, her marriage, and her understanding of her place in the world was permanent. Again, this was illegal. My friend Bethany, in her 20s, a drama student with a whole life ahead of her, full of joy and positivity, one of the nicest people I've ever met in my life, did what Bethany habitually is known to do, and when she saw a car broken down on a long stretch of freeway between Wollongong, where she went to university, and Sydney, where she lived, she pulled her car aside, got out of the car and offered assistance. When the guy with the car that was broken down intimated that she really should get into his car, that would be the best place for her to phone the NRMA, something in Bethany switched. She knew that there was a problem. She did not trust the man, and she sensed a trap. She ran for her car, she drove back to Sydney, and she made a report with the police about what had happened. Many months later, Bethany found herself as a witness in a court case where the accused man, who she recognised and could identify in a lineup, was being prosecuted for the sexual assault of somebody he had entrapped in a similar way. It was on the witness stand where Bethany, who had not been attacked, who was not the person who was pursuing the action, who had merely done her civic duty and given those very important details to the police, found herself being cross-examined. Cross-examined with questions about her own sexual behaviour, about whether she had flirted with the man who had tried to trap her by the roadside, where intimations were made that she was a woman of loose virtue and loose character. Her experience was so poisonous that she said to me that she could not understand how any woman who had survived a genuine sexual assault would feel confident in pursuing justice through the justice system. Lauren, 21, volunteering on a political campaign, meets a young man who invites her to spend time with him. It is all very consenting until it isn't. She is pinned to a bed, she is punched, wrestled and bitten, she is terrified and she freezes, she is raped. When she believes she is safe and no more harm will come to her, she leaves, she goes to the hospital, she completes a rape kit, and she takes photos. She reports the entire incident to the police. She does everything that women are told to do in a scenario of sexual assault. But 2 years later, the police are not pressing charges because they do not believe there's enough evidence to convict the young man. So here's a bit of a variety of stories, all of which contextualise what we are not getting in this country about the very serious obstacles that stand between women and justice. And in the context of the discussion where we're being told that there's a necessary backlash to Me Too, how absolutely unfair it is for men to constantly check the idea that they might in fact be targeted by a false accusation, I am trying to get my head around why anybody would think that women would put themselves through the excruciating process of trying to seek justice in this country if they were going to the trouble of falsifying a claim. I'm not saying that there are not people who manipulate the justice system in their own interest, but I am saying that we have a justice system that is not serving the interests of women when it comes to sexual assault, violence, harassment, and other forms of gendered crime. We have a justice system that does not actually position women at the centre of the justice process or even invite them into a discussion about what justice might or should look like for them. And this is a very important conversation for us to have, because while Me Too has been amazing for people like me and my friends, our experiences of sexual harassment, assault and direct violence being able to be aired in the great act of collective de-shaming, we are in a horrendous twilight in Australia between an awareness of the problem, its solution, and the murky world of injustice in between them. We can have the conversation about the fact that we know that violence against women is not caused by psychiatric illness. It is not caused by criminal recidivism. It is not caused by substance abuse. It is not caused by broken childhoods. Consistently, studies have shown us that violence against women by men is caused by a very distinct set of values that define masculinity as superiority and control, and femininity, what it means to be female, to be passive, to be weak, and to be owned as property. This is what we know. This has been borne out in international studies across many nations, this consistent pattern of behaviour. It is not feminists who think all men are rapists. It is rapists who think all men are rapists. And we exist in a community where messages that come through our most powerful institutions of the law, of politics, of the media are framed in such a way to maintain this paradigm that women are weak and men can be exonerated for the things that we do. And while we're looking at what does justice look like, we've got to recognise that we've inherited a justice system that is fundamentally prejudiced against women. It was only in 1995 that the last set of laws were introduced in this country, in South Australia, to finally make rape illegal in marriage. 1995. In this state of Victoria, it was only 3 years ago, and due to the energetic campaigning of Victoria's sex worker community, that laws that allowed lesser rape sentences for rapists who raped women of less virtue were finally overthrown, and a certain amount of equality was found within the law. But while we have laws on the books and no willingness to prosecute them or to understand what solutions and remediation and justice looks like, we're going to be trapped in a situation where women are actively disincentivised for pursuing any kind of justice process in regards to what has happened to them. I want to know where is the question being asked of women, what do you want to resolve this process? Because when it particularly comes to issues around workplace harassment and family, domestic, intimate partner violence, these are the most important questions. What will it take for you to stay safe? It is not necessarily a payout. It is not necessarily a jail term. It is not necessarily a meted form of punishment. Overwhelmingly, women want processes in place that will get the harassment and the violence to stop. And until we can ask that question of women, how will you feel safe? What can we do? We are participating in a situation that keeps women trapped in roles, in positions, in workplaces and in homes where they are made vulnerable and they are deprived of their right to equality and safety in a community that's supposed to serve everybody. I just want to leave you with one more example of when we look at the situation around family violence and that ongoing question about why didn't she leave? Well, why did she have to? When a woman is being subjected to the perpetration of violence, how have we become a society that expects the victim to be the person who is deprived of their home, their security, their income, and their financial sustenance? Why is justice not in removing the perpetrator from the home and keeping that woman safe and supporting her through the financial security of being able to pursue the 7 different court judgments that she needs to protect herself and her children from abuse, with the safety of her home around her? Why is it that we still live in a community that is paying great attention to the experiences of victims and so little attention to their rights? Thank you.